What is giving me hope right now is the love that I feel from other Minnesotans. It is unimaginable, and it is absolutely trumping any hate that we are experiencing.
Familia. Welcome to the Freedom to Thrive podcast, resistance, justice, and resilience. I just landed in Minneapolis, which feels right given our first guest today is a Minnesota resident, multi-dimensional Somali artist, poet, playwright, educator, Ifrah Mansour. And we're also going to be met with NILC's own senior strategist, Hadi Sedaya. The world is watching Minneapolis right now. And I'm reminded of the words of Dolores Huerta. We must be brave. We must be bold. We must not be afraid to challenge the system. It is we who will save the planet, and we will do it with love. And I feel like this directly applies to our first guest, Ifrah Mansour. Welcome, Ifrah, to the podcast.
Hi, Hector.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining us in this cold. Compañera, I'm from LA, and I am not used to this weather. And I don't know how you do it every year, Ifrah. I don't know how you do it.
I actually moved from Seattle, Washington, and I too felt like, why on earth are we punishing ourselves being here? And now the winter, I love the winter. I love the snow. I yearn for it. It is in my blood.
Right now, we are in the cold season, and
Mm-hmm.
I would be remiss if, to not talk about what's going on right now in Minneapolis. I'm in the airport, and even coming here, a lot of people told me, be careful. Be careful when you go to that city. So I want to ask you, one is, how are you doing in this time, and
Mm.
how is your community doing right now?
Yeah. Um, I have been saying this for a while now. I'm stubbornly okay, and my community is stubbornly okay. Um, we have experienced tremendous pain in the past. We're experiencing tremendous pain right now, and we are stubbornly going to be okay because we are resilient creatures.
Mm.
We really are.
I was just in New Orleans
Mm-hmm.
this past week, and just speaking with a lot of artists down there. That Minneapolis right now is a shining light for many of us.
Yeah,
Minneapolis is showing us how to show up for one another, how to organize for one another, how to care for one another. And a lot of folks
yeah,
who are showing up is the Somali community, the immigrant community, the refugee community, right? Like all these communities. And so, and the question to you right now is, what does solidarity look like to you right now in this time? How are
yeah,
you seeing it being manifested? How are you seeing communities come together or not? But what are you seeing
yeah.
right now?
One of the beautiful things about tragedies is that it activates hearts, and courageous people are literally born. What I'm noticing is that places that are considered ghetto, places that are considered unsafe, more and more Minnesotans that have never stepped foot in it are actually going into these places to express, their allyship for vulnerable people, and it's just really beautiful without not getting into uh, you know, uh, without naming places, to protect, people. I think I'm just amazed to see places that I feel very okay to be around now. Minnesotans that I feel like in the past might not have gone to these places, they're there. They're bringing food. They're bringing extra clothes. They're walking with people. It's just really beautiful. And one thing, you know, it, I'm grateful the world is watching us, and I'm grateful the world is noticing how we're showing up for one another. But there's something very historic about that, Hector, is that Minnesota has a deeply resilient, activist, caring history. And it goes back the pride festivals or the May Day parade. But when you look at all these festivals, how they started, it was actually activists, people coming together to protest against violence who started it.
Mm.
So I'm grateful people are saying Minneapolis are showing up for one another, but this is very historic. We've been doing it for a very long time, and it just
Yeah.
makes me hella proud. Yeah,
Thank you for sharing that, Ifra. This is that
yeah,
Minneapolis has been showing up. It just the world
very
is
much.
just paying attention. They showed up for George
Yeah,
Floyd. They've been showing
very
up for
much.
immigrant communities, and you're definitely right. And I feel like
Exactly.
as an artist to artist, we approach these things in a very particular way. We see trauma, and then we think automatically, how do we create art from this? How do we learn
Hmm.
from this? And so I want to talk a little bit about your arts, and but also that our art comes with us. It's part of our identity. And so one thing I wanted to
Yeah.
ask is, you know, you're someone who has been through a lot. Your journey surviving civil war and displacement and becoming an artist in Minnesota is pretty amazing. And
Hmm.
so one question to you is, what was the journey like from Somalia to the States, Seattle to Minneapolis? How has that journey impacted the way you view your work and your art?
My journey with migration is textured. I experienced Somalia's civil war as a child. A lot of what I remember is just witnessing the care and the love that I received from my parents and the ways in which they've sheltered me from violence. That's literally what the show How to Have Fun in a Civil War is about. The ways in which parents shelter their children, the violent reality they find themselves. And a lot of parents are doing that right now. A lot of parents are, transmuting, translating the violence that is happening to them right now, and they're trying to protect it. They're trying to shield it. That is the parents that are lucky enough to still have their children. Some parents are not lucky enough to have their children. Unfortunately, their children's were taken. Um, for me, sometimes I try to look at how cyclical violence is. As a child, I experienced, a displacement war, and there are children right now in my home state, in my neighborhood that are experiencing that. There's something very painful and timeless about that. So my art is often trying to exhume the accidental or the intentional beauty that is created within violent times. What's really beautiful is that, Hector, I was meant to be a teacher, and then I found the arts from the streets, and I just went that way.
That was going to be my question, is like, at what point in your journey did you realize, actually, I want to create. I'm a creative. I,
Yeah,
I need to make, I need to write, I need to produce.
yeah,
At what point did that hit you uh in
yeah.
your journey?
Oh, the thing about coming to the States, as an immigrant child, is that you're often um, asked or pressured to choose careers that that will help your family, reach, better economic status and whatnot. So I remember when I was in college, I was pressured to become a nurse, a doctor. A teacher was not even an option. So I remember at least like choosing, the teaching field because I felt a calling for it. Um, but I also just remember Hector constantly um, not doing really well because my writing would be too creative, and the teacher would say, "No, this is meant to be, a scientific report. What is this poetic phrasings?" So I didn't clock it right away that I was an artist. I got a job in college to work at a theater, and I was supposed to market the theater so more immigrant people could come. And there were no immigrants interested in this theatrical works, but it worked on me. I marketed the arts to myself. So I remember essentially becoming brave and choosing to, um, you know, choosing to explore the arts. And boy, was that just a magical thing for me to do, because what I remembered is I I started writing about stories that I've never even told to myself. I started writing down. I started talking to my own community about the Civil War that we've all experienced. And it's my play is definitely one of a kind. It's a play that has been staged throughout the states, in London. It's the first time. I was so grateful. A lot of the post-show discussion, there were just parents that brought their American-born children, and the children were seeing for the first time what their parents have gone through. Because another things as immigrants, when we come here, another thing we try to do is we accidentally erase our own trauma, our own story, in order to get ahead, in order to assimilate. And I think a lot of parents were noticing that then their kids were looking at them as if strangers.
Yeah.
Because when
You know,
when someone
I want to
doesn't,
say, Ifrah, you just to because I want to stick it. You wrote a piece called "How to Have Fun in the Civil War,"
yeah,
and it was done from the perspective of a 7-year-old child.
yeah.
Was that piece autobiographical, or did you take it from various stories when you were putting it together?
It's a multi-generational storytelling. Um, as a Somali, I grew up in a large family. There's always, the aunties, the grandmas, and when everybody is around together, everyone is telling a story, but everyone is telling that story very differently. I was so inspired by that cultural practice. So the whole play, the little girl is telling the story of Somalia's civil war and how we all had to leave our homes, but there are 20 other people that are sort of like interjecting and like adding their own different perspectives. Um, yeah, and I think I'm amazed that um, the when we're using the arts to tell a real life story, I'm always curious and cautious about what do I want out of it? Do I want people at the end of the day to be connected, to see each other's humanities, or do I want to create rips and disconnections, given that the Civil War was essentially, internal conflict, even though there were, external factors. So yeah, absolutely love that play. And there's also poetry, a puppet. It's just really beautiful. It's
I
one of my
love it.
proud works. Yeah.
You know, I feel like I have conversations. You know, I have friends. I'm the child of undocumented immigrants,
Mm,
but I am not. I was born here, so I did not go through undocumented experience, but I saw it through my parents, um, and my friends who are undocumented. A lot of the conversation is that there's a lot of like people want to know about the trauma all the time, and so it's like we're more than just undocumented, and
mm,
the conversation I've had also with other refugee families too is like we're more than just refugees. We're artists, we're singers, we're
yes.
creatives. Yes, we're also nurses and accountants, but there's so much richness in the culture.
Very
And it feels
much.
like in the media only shares sort of like one part, like the Somalian culture is like defined by its refugee status, you
Yeah.
know what would be one thing that you feel like that you love about Somali culture, that you feel
Yeah.
like people don't acknowledge or don't know about, that you would love to share with
Yeah.
folks? What would you say?
I would say my Somali ancestors were nomadic, and they were. um, deeply, eco-conscious. This is something that I am learning myself. There are all of this, artwork, stories that are created actually to care and protect, the environment. One of the things that I am right now unearthing is that, my Somali nomads, they invented the structure that is essentially a modern day tent, but all made from nature equitably. It is called akal. I actually make it. I I learned it by volunteering for the Somali Museum, which you have to go visit since you are here. You have to go inside. The akal. That akal is traditional. It is essentially handmade. There are arches that are hand woven, and then there are these thatches that sometimes take a year and some to weave. And when the weaver is weaving this thatch, they actually create songs, they actually create poetry. So there's so much beauty, um, in our culture. And this is why I love creating. One of the things that I actually do is, I do school visits, and I actually teach students, how to make this little small hut. Granted, I call it, the healing akal, because I'm also really fascinated in how we can literally build a home for our healing, for our collective healing, our individual healings. And I try to use what I know from my culture, which is this indigenous structure, called akal, and sort of insert it into a thing that we all, I hope, are yearning for, a sense of healing.
Speaking of the nomadic ancestry, I heard Nomadic Cafe has the best tea in Minneapolis. Would you agree?
Yes, yes. Nomadic cafe, yes. We could start a war by just naming few cafes. Capital
But
Cafe is also pretty
people
good.
don't know. I was asking you offline before we jumped in the interview. I was asking Ifrah for the top top tea
A,
spots
a
in
good
St.
Somali
Paul. You know what I
tea.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah, a good Somali tea. I mean, at this point, there's so many wonderful options. What I like to point out is that the Somali culture is huge. The community is actually diverse. So every region has its own
Mm.
Somali herb mixes or spice
Mm.
mixes. Um, there's certain regions they like to have more ginger endings with their Somali tea. Somali tea is kind of similar to chai if you've never had it. It's just it's got a lot of herbs. Um, so every region uses a particular herb more than the other. um, yeah,
I love it.
I grew up in the South, so my community used a lot more cardamom. So ginger
Hmm.
was never in our tea. It's just really beautiful. And here in Minnesota, I actually add, because I'm so Minnesota-fied, I actually add I actually add sage because I love sage. And sage is
Mm.
indigenous to Minnesota, and I'm like, yeah,
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 it's indigenous over here too, to the lands over here. Yes, yes.
yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
wonderful. And I learned, I learned that too. Also, I saw the PBS special that you were featured in. It was a wonderful, wonderful feature. And
Oh,
one of the things that came
gratitude.
out there was just sort of the sort of that that tea is so special to the culture and the making of the
Yeah,
tea and the herbals and it's earthy and it's planted and it's from Mother
yeah,
Earth, and those are things that I feel like those are those ancestral teachings that the food we eat and drink. Yes, you can go to the store and buy it, but it all comes from the earth. And what are the practices
very
that you do
much.
to make sure to remind you that the earth is here to
Yeah,
feed us? And I love that. You know?
yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. One of the things that I noticed when I was creating the play How to Have Fun in a Civil War, I I was going to my community and I was asking them to tell me a story that they've yet to tell to themselves. For the first few interviews, I had a hard time. I was just noticing people just shutting down. And granted, I'm interviewing people that are very close to me, like these are like friends that I grew up with, and I remember them withdrawing, not wanting to tell their story with me. And the minute I started making Somali tea, and I would actually call ahead and I asked them what type of Somali tea they grew up with, and I would make that, and we would actually have a tea together. I owe a lot of my career success to Somali tea because the tea alone got me really good, kind, generous interviews. So I'm so grateful.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, I
yeah.
love that story. Thank you for sharing that because I feel like what are the things that make us feel at home? What are the things that
Mm,
make us feel at peace, right? And you sort of
yeah,
understanding that for for the folks that you were trying to bring
yeah,
out and tell their stories. It was I love that. I
yeah.
love that.
Even right now in this occupation that we're living under, I love
Mm,
that we are using the power of food. We are feeding one another. We are sharing each
yes.
other's cultural foods. I love that there's sambusas showing up on the streets.
Mm,
Um, we're definitely feeding our hearts with
yeah.
our cultural gifts, and food is our cultural gifts, and it's what makes Minnesota amazing. It's a unique communities. It's the Somalis, it's the Hmongs, and for some reason we've all decided that Minnesota is it. We're elsewhere, like in sprinkles, but this is our joint. The snow. The snow is our joint, and I just love that there's certain places that, Hector, if you go in, you feel like you are not in Minnesota anymore. I hope you go
Mm,
to the Somali Mall. I
mm,
hope you go to the Hmong Market on Como. You literally get transported away from
yeah.
America, and that's
Yeah.
how much we've made ourselves at home, and nobody gonna change that.
Hey, that's right. You know, it's funny. I took my little niece when she was like 6 years old, and I took her to a Mexican market
Mm,
in East Los Angeles. And you
yeah,
go there, and we're walking through, and she looks up to me and she says, "I didn't know Mexico was so close to my house." You know, because it felt you walk in there and it feels like you're transported to another culture, another space, a place that we have now made our own, right? And it's beautiful. And the way you describe that here, that what you've done and what you all have cultivated here, and creating
yeah.
home in Minneapolis is beautiful, you know. And so, my last question to you, compañera, um, we've done a lot of art, myself included, and responding and to the violence that we've seen, that we and one is like a lot of our families and friends have left countries because of violence, right? In the Somali community, many
Mhm.
folks have fled violence, and now there's violence here in Minneapolis. And as an artist, what gives you hope right now for the people who are fighting, for displaced folks, for immigrants and refugees right now who are creating a home here? What gives
Yeah,
you hope in this time?
yeah. What is giving me hope right now is the love that I feel from other Minnesotans. It is unimaginable, and it is absolutely trumping any hate that we are experiencing.
Yes.
I think a lot of Minnesotans, we feel even extra proud to be in this very cold state. But there's a lot of very warm hearts. This is what Ilhan Omar always, to talks about. And it's unfortunate what recently happened to her. Um, but there's a lot of warm hearts in our state, and we're so
Yes.
proud of that. And I am seeing elders on the street. I'm seeing children's on the street, and everyone is showing up for the truth, for kindness, for love, and I will say it again. We are living unafraid and brave because we must, and we will. Mm.
I love it. I love it. Amiga, what a, a beautiful sharing. I just want to say that I appreciate your time. I appreciate your artwork, your words. Um, I've been saying there's a reason we were born in these times. It's not an accident. And so I thank you from artist to artist. Thank you for creating. Thank you for cultivating. And I will see you soon, amiga. Thank you so much. Much love from Los Angeles to Minneapolis. Much solidarity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hector.
Thank you so much, Ifrah. Gracias. Minneapolis, you've been a shining light for all of us across the country. Thank you so much. As heartbreaking as it's been, it's also been so inspiring to see you on the front lines protecting one another. Thank you. I want to keep the conversation going with the senior strategist from the National Immigration Law Center, Brother Hadi Sadaya. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Hector. I'm so honored to be here, especially following that great conversation that you had with Ifrah that spoke to me in so many ways and made me reflect in so many ways on things that I have been reflecting on. And just to hear someone who is at sort of the epicenter of so much of the pain that immigrants are feeling right now, be able to speak to kindness and power and resilience and optimism is so wonderful and empowering for me, and I think speaks to how Nilk tries to capture the energy of folks like Ifrah and turn that into mass movement and power at the national level for immigrants.
It makes me think about, like, we're confronting so much, like, hate and poison, and then when you hear a conversation with Ifrah, it's like she's coming with love, and she's coming with like empathy, right? And the softness and tenderness of her voice carries so much ferocity, right? And I feel like, yeah, I'm someone that could be easily triggered, you know. And speaking to someone like that, there's a strength to that gentleness, In her story, um were you able to hear some of the, like, remnants with your family and your journey of migration, similarities, differences? What did you hear from that?
Yeah, absolutely, Hector. Thank you for asking that. And I think anytime you sort of hear someone speak to the experience of migration and displacement and, renewed beginnings, I think you definitely think of your own experience. And certainly listening to Ifrah and reading her work reminded me of my family moving in 1995 from Tehran, a huge, fairly metropolitan city uh, in the Middle East that is unfortunately in the news now for some worrying reasons. And we moved from that big metropolis to Terre Haute, Indiana, a small rural town on the Illinois border, basically where Indiana State University is, where my mom was pursuing her education at the time. And I think what Ifrah helped me in her writing and in your conversation kind of hone in on is some of my own experience of belonging and how you find belonging, and it not just being something that is sort of thrust upon you from the environment that you enter into, but is something that has to do with your own perception and your own ability to take the different things that new environment throws at you. So I think about coming here and maybe some part of human nature is to think about the hard things in Terre Haute post 9/11. And my sisters and my mom are visibly Muslim. They wear the hijab. So, honestly, anytime we went outside, it felt like, like, hey, we did something wrong and we're not quite sure what it is and how to fix it. But that's the vibe we get. But having said that, I also think about so many people that helped me find my way in America, and my family and my sisters and my mom. And so many just kind of random faces in the crowd that sometimes did big things, like really took me under their wing in different ways and showed me how to be a teenager in a new society. And even little things, like I will always remember getting my hair cut by this old white guy in Terre Haute, and I would go with my mom, and it was always a little awkward. Sometimes the barbershops were not like a Muslim vibe necessarily, if you will, Hector. Um, and it was always an anxiety inducing experience. And one time I remember a guy I used to go to often, older white guy, his friend came in, and it was literally just the three of us and my mom. And he said to his friend, "Will you look at how impressive this kid is? Jeez, where's he going?" And I was like 17, and I just remember thinking like, man, wow, like, thank you. And I didn't say anything to him. I think I just laughed it off, but it gave me so much energy in an environment where you're constantly looking for that validation. So I think
You
that,
know, question,
yeah,
Adi. Growing up, did you feel yourself wanting to assimilate, or did you feel yourself wanting like, or you were raised to sort of really hold on to your culture? And was there tension with that
yeah.
when you were growing up in Indiana?
It's such a good question, Hector, that really cuts to the heart of, I think, the experience and what Ifrah was talking about and what we all have experienced in different ways. And I think, especially as a person who's not a full adult yet, you're dying to assimilate. You're all you want is to assimilate. You want to go to school and feel like you're just one of the kids, and you kind of blunt your differences in that way, but then you have these elements in your life that maybe at the time feel like they're pushing back against that, but then you grow up and you think, man, like, I'm glad I didn't assimilate. And some of that is because of the Muslim community I had around me, even in Terre Haute, or my mom refusing to speak English to us at home. Even if we spoke English to
Mm,
her, she was going to respond in Farsi and
yes.
things like that. So
Yeah.
I would say, Hector, in a way that is funny to think about, I was focused on assimilating, and I'm glad I had community around me that helped me preserve some of what my ancestors were
Yeah.
about.
Yeah. And again, as a young person who's finding oneself, right? Like you're going through your journey of identity. How did you come into this work?
Mhm.
Like in terms of the social justice work, was that something that you felt at a very young age, or is that something that happened in college? Is
Brilliant.
that something that happened as a young adult? When did you really feel connected to someone who really wanted to do justice work out in the community?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. I think I would answer that in a couple of ways, Hector, given my own experience. And one is just kind of moving through the world, and maybe even at times where you don't realize it, seeing how your own family or others are mistreated or not welcomed into society the same way, and just kind of keeping little pieces of that with you, so that when you have to make those decisions about what you do in your life, those voices speak to you a little bit. And then I would say, for me personally, I'm a DACA recipient, to this day, probably one of the oldest ones at this point, but hanging in there. And so for me, it's very simply about paying it forward. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those that knelt 15 years before I sat here doing the work with the DREAM Act, writing the bill, passing it. So very much feel like I am here because of the movement and the wins that we have achieved despite all the difficulty. And I want to continue that in whatever way I can.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. And then one, like you're a senior strategist
Mhm.
at the National Immigration Law Center. Can you share with folks what that work entails?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a few different folks in similar roles that are looking at different parts of the threats that face immigrants and the opportunities that we can make of them in line with Ifra's kind of school of thought in that conversation. And I think my specific role is on what we call democracy defense, and that goes in a lot of different directions. And I think right now what we're focused on is making sure everyone knows that our democracy and our society can be defended, that legislators can do it, not just at the federal level, but also at the state and local level, and that there's no elected official right now that's powerless, and they should all be exploring all their paths of fortifying their communities against these threats that are unfolding in horrible ways in front of us. So one of the specific things we've been doing is this campaign called "No Secret Police, No Troops in Our Streets," that we are carrying out with some close partners in the human rights space, including ACLU and Local Progress and others. And the focus is really just to lift up the work that states and localities have been doing. You've heard about the bills probably that have been passed in California and Delaware, New Jersey, and many other places to either limit collaboration with immigration enforcement or in other ways protect the community. And what we're trying to do in this campaign and at NILC is to uplift that and to get the message out there that there's things that can be done even in the face of a federal government that is acting in ways that we all know are cruel and un-American, and that there's other things that we can do about it outside of that level of government.
Brother Hadi, what is something tangible people can do right now to support the work of NILC, folks on the ground in Minneapolis, and the immigrant community? What would you say?
They can go on nilc.org/no-secret-police, and there's a form there through which they can communicate with their state legislators about this No Secret Police campaign, the threats that it aims to help local communities and their states resist, and how they can get involved. And that is nilc.org/no-secret-police. So I would say visit that website and you'll see where to go from there.
Okay. And we're telling people to like email their senators and let them know.
Absolutely.
No secret police. Like that's something you don't have to go in negative 20-degree weather like folks in Minneapolis. You could do that from the comfort of your own home. You could email your senator right now and let them know how you feel about secret police and how we want them out. So yes, thank you very much for that. Hadi, gracias, homie. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your testimony. And as someone who had a crazy childhood, you know, growing up too, dealing with assimilation and my journey, I thank you for sharing your story, man. And that's something difficult to say. And I really appreciate your honesty, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gracias.
Appreciate it, Hector. Gracias to you.
Hadi.
And it was an honor to be on with you and with Ifrah as well. Thank you.
Same here, brother. Gracias. Thanks for listening to the episode of NILC's Freedom to Thrive podcast. Resistance, justice, resilience. To learn more about the work NILC is doing, visit nilc.org and don't forget to subscribe for future episodes.